Welcome to this explainer. If you look closely at today's global news, there's this really fascinating, hidden theme tying everything together. We're looking at how entities of all sizes, literally from massive nation-states all the way down to individual teenagers, are making these unprecedented, high-stakes bets. We are living in a world right now where the risks are scaling up, the margins for error are shrinking, and the gambles being taken are completely reshaping our future.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to zoom in, starting with Part 1, Iran's high-stakes waterway gamble. Then Part 2, defending the Japanese yen. Part 3, SpaceX's trillion-dollar target. And finally, Part 4, catching fake college applications.
Okay, let's kick things off with Part 1, Iran's high-stakes waterway gamble, the geopolitical bet on the Strait of Hormuz. We really have to ask ourselves, why is a single waterway the absolute center of a massive geopolitical showdown? Well, the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a stretch of water. Right now, it's the ultimate geopolitical bargaining chip in the standoff between Iran, the US, and Israel. According to recent reporting, Iran has actually made control over the specific artery a non-negotiable red line. By asserting authority here, Tehran is making a massive geopolitical bet.
Let's break down the strategic mechanics of this. On one hand, you have Iran's economic leverage play. They're basically betting that their ability to inflict pain on the US economy, specifically by driving up gasoline prices and inflation right ahead of the fast-approaching midterm elections, will force the Trump administration to accept their terms just to avoid military action. They're assuming Washington will prefer a messy stalemate over an actual war. But, on the flip side, we have a very real breaking point. Experts are warning that Tehran seriously risks miscalculating Washington's threshold here. By playing this card so aggressively, they risk turning a volatile stalemate into an all-out war. It is an extraordinary gamble, one that could literally threaten their own economic survival.
Moving down a level to Part 2, defending the Japanese yen, a multi-billion-dollar currency shield.
Okay, so Japan holds a staggering $1.1 trillion in U.S. treasuries. That's trillion with a T. Now, with the yen currently at its weakest point since 1986, the conventional economic playbook says, hey, they should liquidate those treasuries to buy yen, right? But dumping a massive chunk of that $1.1 trillion would immediately spike U.S. bond yields, which, by the way, are already at their highest level since 2007, and that would dramatically shake global markets. And honestly, neither Japan nor the U.S. wants that to happen. So the million-dollar question, or I guess the trillion-dollar question, is how do you defend yen without totally tanking the bond market? Well, you dust off a pandemic-era backstop called the FIMA repo facility. This is a Fed program that allows foreign central banks to borrow dollars against their U.S. Treasury holdings without actually having to liquidate them. And right now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is actively pressuring Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh to expand this facility's cap above its current $60 billion limit, essentially to bankroll Japan's currency defense.
The ripple effects of this are just massive. Last Friday actually marked the first joint US-Japan yen purchase we've seen since 1998. But here's the real gamble. If this fails, and a weak yen continues to feed expectations of higher Japanese inflation, we could see a historic rush of capital. You see, Japanese institutions are the world's largest cross-border creditors. So rising yields at home mean that capital currently parked in US, German, and British debt could rush right back to Tokyo, totally shaking up global finance. Meanwhile, Secretary Bessent publicly pressuring the Fed on social media to raise that facility cap, that is a massive, unprecedented test of the boundary between the Treasury's authority and the Federal Reserve's independence.
Let's shift gears to the corporate world with Part 3, SpaceX's trillion-dollar target, spending billions to make trillions.
SpaceX is seeing some absolutely explosive top-line growth right now. Following their record-setting $86 billion IPO, their very first earnings report showed second-quarter revenues totaling $7.8 billion across their space, connectivity, and AI business lines. That is an absolutely massive 92% jump from the exact same period last year. You hear those numbers and you think, wow, they must just be printing money.
But here is the wild part. Directly contrasted with that massive revenue is a $541 million net loss for the quarter. You really have to ask, how does a company double its revenue to almost $8 billion and still manage to lose $500 million? Well, it's driven entirely by an eye-watering $18.4 billion in capital expenditures. They spent $18.4 billion in a single quarter, which is way up from just $2.8 billion the prior year.
The answer to why they're spending so heavily comes straight from Elon Musk himself. He is targeting a mind-bending $1 trillion in revenue by 2030.
He is gambling on this incredibly aggressive, loss-leading expansion to accelerate those financial goals. And by the way, that includes a truly wild plan to literally launch data centers into space by 2027. It's really the ultimate corporate gamble, right? Spending tens of billions today in the absolute certainty that you're going to make trillions tomorrow.
Finally, we're bringing it all the way down to the micro level with Part 4, Catching Fake College Applications, the Battle for Elite Admissions.
So meet the real human faces of the Caltech fraud squad. That's Nick Lee, Ashley Polly, Johanna Arahujo, and Jonah Magil. They are a dedicated 4-person team, and they're tasked exclusively with vetting applications for a highly selective STEM-focused school that admits less than 4% of its applicants. As admissions get increasingly competitive and students are submitting these long, complex lists of independent projects and research, the stakes for these kids feel higher than ever. And that's leading some teenagers to basically go all in on a dangerous bluff.
This fraud squad inspects every single admitted student's application, and they take absolutely nothing for granted, because they are catching some wild misrepresentations. Doctored photos of 16-year-olds holding trophies? Check. Fake standardized letterheads and totally unverified school addresses? Check. And amazingly, they've even caught essays that literally still say generated by ChatGPT at the very bottom. To fight back against this, Caltech implemented a new software called Viva. It requires students who submit research papers to complete a 60-second rapid-fire video interview just to verify they actually did the work. In one instance, a student panicked and literally just exited the browser when they couldn't answer basic questions about their own supposed research. Technology has made falsifying accomplishments easier than ever before, and these teens are betting they just won't get caught.
So, whether it's a geopolitical showdown over a critical waterway, international currency defense, launching space data centers, or a teenager faking a college essay, entities at literally every level are betting big right now. And I think it leaves us with a really vital question to ponder. As technology accelerates and the pressure to win increases across the board, how do we actually maintain trust moving forward? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped you connect the dots on how our world is shifting today. Keep questioning and keep learning.